All right, welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast. This has been a couple weeks where we have been doing solo episodes, and we are back. It's Ashley and I for this podcast episode. So the last episode, I talked about planning a summer sourcing trip. Casey and I went back to Iowa. We were gone for almost 2 weeks, and we got to go sourcing thrifting in different areas. And that kind of sparked this episode for me. So we sourced and went into Goodwill in 4 different states: Iowa, Missouri, Colorado, and Nebraska. And so we got to see the different Goodwills, because every Goodwill is ran by a regional Goodwill. So a lot of them are different. And it really made me think, like, is this the end of Goodwill? Is Goodwill done? Is it not a good place to go thrifting anymore? So I want to give a little history of Goodwill, because I was looking at, when did Goodwill even start? And I don't know if a lot of you realize, but it was started in 1902 by Reverend Edgar J. Helms. And so he was a reverend of a church, and he started Goodwill to collect used household goods and clothing, and then redistribute them to people in need. So it really was started for a good cause. And I didn't realize that Goodwill started way back in the 1900s. I had no idea till I started looking up this information. And let's be real, there are Goodwills everywhere. There's over 3,200 Goodwill stores out there. You can look up all of their data, like their tax records and everything. That's all public knowledge. Like, you can find that information out there. And so I looked it up, and in 2022, Goodwill reported that they made $66,997,749 on their Form 990. So that was how much Goodwill received from all the sources. That was before subtracting any of their costs of expenses. So all that financial information you can find on their website, which I found pretty fascinating, because Goodwill makes a lot of money, but they're quote unquote a non-profit organization, but still they are making money.
Well, they also have to make some kind of a profit to be able to pay their employees and stuff like that, because it's not like volunteer run. I think it's important to remember that it wasn't started for resellers, you know what I mean? Obviously, like we just went over that, but I think it's easy for people to get into the mindset of like, why are they doing this? Why, this is ruining, Goodwill for resellers. Like, they don't exist for us. And I think it's important to remember that, like, as we go through, like the rest of the episode and all the information, like it was started for a purpose, and, maybe that purpose has changed slightly throughout, the last 100 and however many years. But how many years would that be? 100 and, was it
1902 was when it started.
Oh my God. So 120 years or 120 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's important to remember that as, we go through the episode. And also, it might have started as one purpose, like to redistribute, items to people in need. And now, obviously they're selling these items. I don't know if it started out as like a free thing or if they were selling the items or not. Maybe their vision has changed slightly in the last like 120 years or whatever it is. But it's really easy when we're using it for one purpose to focus on that purpose. Like, their prices are crazy and now I can't source there. Well, it was never intended for you to source there, it's just kind of like the icing on the cake that you're able to find items there once in a while. So I think this is going to be really interesting to kind of dig into and see what your experience was.
Yeah. So we did stop in the 4 states: Iowa, Missouri, Nebraska, Colorado. And I was really excited to source in those areas because, it's always good to get outside of your home state or your home area and kind of see what other Goodwills have, because all of them have different items. They're ran differently. I like going into small towns. I think small towns are some of the places where we find our best items, our most profitable items. I don't know. My experience got me thinking, is this the end of Goodwill? I do have some thoughts on that. So when we went, I realized Goodwill's not going to go anywhere. We talked a little bit already about the history. It goes back to the 1900s. It's been around for 120 years. Like, Goodwill is not going anywhere. And it's very evident when you're on a road trip and you're Googling, like there's Goodwills you can find really close to wherever you are. Like they are pretty much everywhere. Having 3,200 stores in 50 different states, I mean, that's a lot of stores. So no matter where you are, you're going to be able to find Goodwill. I don't think they're going to be going away. There's people donating all the time. It didn't matter. I mean, any Goodwill we went to on our road trip, there were people there donating. People are still giving to the cause because they believe in the cause. They believe in there's stuff that I need to get rid of. Why am I going to just throw it away when I can donate it and then hopefully somebody else can use it, whether that's going to be somebody who needs it or, resellers buying it. I mean, I don't think people donating think, oh, I'm going to donate to resellers. They're donating to the cause because they believe that Goodwill is going to provide a store for goods that people are going to eventually need. So one of the things I did notice when we went to the Goodwills in Arizona, I don't know how it is in New York, but in Arizona, you can subscribe to their email and every single month you get a 20% off coupon if you spend $20 or more. And then we also have the colored tag rotation. So every week there's a new colored tag. That tag is 50% off starting on Friday. And then Thursday it goes to $2 because we don't have Dollar Day anymore. They really do give pretty good discounts. One thing I noticed in the other states that we went to, they did not have any discounts. Like it was just the colored tag was that colored tag day. Like in Missouri, we stopped and they had a yellow tag that was $1.29 and that was their deal. So it really does vary from state to state whether Goodwill is going to provide any sort of discount. So I thought that was really interesting because they're ran regionally and so it depends on where you're at. But it's always good to ask the employees when you're going to different states and trying out different Goodwills just to make sure you're maximizing, the discounts that they offer, because not all of them do. So there's a couple of reasons why I feel like we maybe didn't find a lot of items on our road trip. I feel like we didn't go to good locations. So when you're on a road trip, you don't really know the stores that are going to have the better inventory. So we were just literally using Google, searching for Goodwill and going to just specific ones that were close to wherever we were going to be. So I think that could have had a little bit of an effect on the items that we were finding. And it's not like they didn't have good stuff. It's just they were stores where there just wasn't a lot of inventory and they were smaller stores. And I feel like if we knew the area better, we might have been able to find more things because we would have been in the stores with better inventory. Another thing, we stopped at the wrong time. So like the Kansas City one where they had the yellow tag for $1.29, we were there later in the day, where if we maybe were there right when they opened with that colored tag, we probably would have found more stuff, but there was like nothing that was a good deal in that store. And they didn't have a lot of new items that they were bringing out. So that was probably our mistake as well, which is just something that you're going to deal with if you're going to different Goodwills. Another thing, we are becoming way more selective, and Casey even mentioned that, like we are not buying those items that we're only going to profit a couple dollars at a time. We're looking for the items that we are going to profit $10 plus because our time is valuable and we're just not going to waste our time with those low profit items. So we are more selective, which in the end, if you are being more selective, you're probably not going to be buying as much stuff. I mean, we literally could buy we could fill up a cart at Goodwill if we really wanted to, and we would be able to resell it and make it. Leads me to, is this the end of Goodwill? We went on that road trip and it just got me thinking, like, we are not finding hardly anything. We had more success going to other types of thrift stores other than Goodwill. And so, is this the end of Goodwill? You hear people saying they're raising prices, pricing stuff so high that resellers can't go anymore. Even, the normal, it doesn't matter if you are a reseller, like people aren't going to go in there and they're not going to pay $50 for a pair of jeans when they can buy them anywhere else for $20 to $30. Like some of their prices are outrageous. They're pricing things way too high. I know out here, the Harley Davidson, I don't know, they think it's gold or something because they price shirts at $20 and sometimes they're up to $40-$50. You can buy it cheaper on eBay. You can buy in a Harley Davidson store for cheaper than what they're trying to sell everything. So I think they are pricing stuff really, really high. But we, like you said before, we really have to remember they're doing that to make money, because in the end, they have to pay employees and they have to pay, just the buildings in general. We all know how much storage costs. Like imagining you're a Goodwill business and you have to pay for the building, all the utilities. So you have to have internet, electricity, you have to pay the employees, you have to pay a cleaning crew to come in. Like they have a lot of expenses. And I think that sometimes we have to think about it. Even though they say it's a nonprofit organization, they still have to pay the bills. So that is, some of the reason why they do price stuff a little higher is because they need to make money.
They also have a good way of moving their inventory. So, they have a system in place. So it really doesn't matter to them what they start an item off at. It is in their best interest to ask top dollar because they might get it. Someone might buy it for, a Harley Davidson shirt for $40 or $50. That might happen. If it doesn't happen, then, in certain areas, they have, like you said, different sale days for different color tags. So then they discount it in store. Maybe it gets discounted again, whatever their process is to move it through the store. And then if it doesn't sell in the store, it gets sent out, to wherever, maybe the bins or whatever their liquidation process is. So they continuously are discounting and trying to get top dollar for that item, and before moving it to the bins where, then it's whatever by the pound or, whatever that local bins, however they price it, wherever it gets shipped out to. They're more likely to sell it there, of course, at the bins when it's priced lower, but they're still trying to get top dollar. And obviously it's working for them, or they wouldn't be doing that. So I think that's probably what their strategy is right now. And, to them, ultimately, it doesn't really matter if they ask $40 or $50 for a Harley shirt and it doesn't sell at that price, because they have such a streamlined process of filtering their inventory through their system. If it was just, it's going to sit here for years and years and years, priced at $40 or $50, obviously that's not a good strategy for them, but that's not what their strategy is. So I think, again, it's just understanding a little bit about how the Goodwill works, how they move their inventory through. And again, it's not about us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think Goodwill's still growing. People are still donating. They shop there, whether they're resellers or not. You see on social media, the resellers just getting very upset with the fact that prices are increasing. And yeah, we're going to find those items, like you say, that are going to be really expensive. And they're pricing them for a reason. They're trying to see if things like that will sell. And then there's some people where you're like, yeah, you don't even know how to price items. Because then you'll see tags from other stores. Maybe it was donated and the Target sticker's still on there and it says, $15, but then Goodwill charges $20 for it. So they charge more than what the tag from the original store is. I mean, you're going to see that. I still think Goodwill is a good place to source. I really do. It's a good thrift store. You can still find items. I know a lot of people in our area are still finding good items because I see on social media, our friend Brad was over and we were talking about Goodwill and when we went sourcing on the road. And, he also feels he doesn't do it full time. He does it part time, but he's like, I still find good items. He found a pair of floor shine shoes and he flipped them. He bought them for $10 and he flipped them for over $300. So you can still find those items out there. Is it more challenging? Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons why you're not finding as many of those items. I think there is a little bit more competition. I think a lot of people during COVID realized, I need to make some money. And they saw how online selling worked. And I think a lot of people do kind of do it, dabble in it. They do it part-time. I feel like there is a lot more competition, which could affect, what items you're finding out there. A lot of free content's out there. So now people can follow, different accounts on YouTube, our reselling podcast. This is all free content that people can absorb. And I think people are learning how to, resell. So I think there is a little bit more competition, which affects, what you're going to find in the thrift store. Goodwill has crazy prices, but I still feel you can find plenty. You just have to put in the work. And I think a lot of people want to blame Goodwill for these crazy prices when really they need to take a step back. And what are you doing? Are you trying other places? Are you going out and going to garage sales? Are you only relying on Goodwill? We've talked about it before. You shouldn't just rely on one source where you're going to find items to resell. You should always be trying new things, going out, being diversified with where you're sourcing, because in the end, you do need to find items and you shouldn't just depend on Goodwill.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that Daycheck.